Reading through the Bible in 1 year, April 7th, Leviticus 15, Proverbs 14, Luke 23, 1 through 25, and 1 Timothy 2, 1 through 3, 7. All right, laws about bodily discharges. This is grody. All right, let's get cracking. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel and say to them, when any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. And this is the law of his uncleanness for a discharge. Whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is blocked up by his discharge, I don't even want to know what that means. It is his uncleanness. Every bed on which the one with the discharge lies shall be unclean, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. And anyone who touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever sits on anything on which the one with the discharge has sat shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches the body of the one with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in the water and be unclean until the evening. And if the one with the discharge spits on someone who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And any saddle on which the one with the discharge rides shall be unclean. And whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever carries such things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Anyone whom the one with the discharge touches, without having rinsed his hands in water, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And an earthenware vessel that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when the one with the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count out for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes. Then he shall bathe his body in fresh water and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. And the priest shall use them, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord for his discharge." All right, cool. Now it gets worse, or at least grodier. If a man has emission of semen, he shall bathe his whole body in water and shall be unclean until the evening. And every garment and every skin on which the semen comes shall be washed with water and be unclean until the evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them shall bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening. When a woman has a discharge, and the discharge in her body is blood, she shall be in her menstrual impurity for 7 days. Whoever touches her shall be unclean until the evening. And everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean. Everything also on which she sits shall be unclean. And whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening. Whether it is the bed or on anything which she sits, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until the evening. And if any man lies with her, and her menstrual impurity comes upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, not at the time of her menstrual impurity, or if she has a discharge beyond the time of her impurity, all the days of the discharge she shall continue in uncleanness. Remember the woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years? Yeah. She was unclean, couldn't enter into anything with the temple, had to be completely separated from the people of God, and had to be basically quarantined inside her own house and away from her family this whole time. As in the days of her impurity, she shall be unclean. Sorry, yeah, I said that right. Every bed on which she lies, all the days of her discharge, shall be to her as the bed of her impurity, and anything on which she sits shall be unclean. As in the days of as in the uncleanness of her menstrual impurity. And whoever touches these things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and bring them to the priest, to the entrance of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall use one of them for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. Thus you shall keep the people of Israel separate from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness by defiling my tabernacle that is in their midst. This is the law for him who has a discharge, and for him who has an emission of semen, becoming unclean thereby, and also for her who is unwell with her menstrual impurity, that is, for anyone, male or female, who has a discharge, and for the man who lies with a woman who is unclean. And mañana we go over Yom Kippur. Now Proverbs 14. The wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down. Whoever walks in uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is devious in his ways despises him back. By the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops comes by the strength of an ox. A faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies. A scoffer seeks wisdom in vain, but knowledge is easy for a man of understanding. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving. Fools mock at the guilt offering, but the upright enjoy acceptance. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no stranger shares its joy. The house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. Even in laughter, the heart may ache, and the end of joy may be grief. The backslider in heart will be filled with the fruits of his ways, and a good man will be filled with the fruits of his ways. The simple, basically meaning the stupid, believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. One who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. A man of quick temper acts foolishly, and a man of evil devices is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil bow down before the good, the wicked at the gates of the righteous. The poor is disliked even by his neighbor, but the rich has many friends. Whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. Do they not go astray who devise evil? Those who devise good meet steadfast love and faithfulness. In all toil or work there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. The crown of the wise is their wealth, but the folly of fools brings more folly. A truthful witness saves lives, but the one who breathes out lies is deceitful. In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, and his children will have a refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. In a multitude of people is the glory of a king, but without people a prince is ruined. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a safety temper exalts folly. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. The wicked is overthrown through his evil doing, but the righteous finds refuge in his death. Wisdom rests in the heart of a man of understanding, but it makes itself known even in the midst of fools. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. A servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on the one who acts shamefully. Now Luke 22, 1 through 25. Then the whole company of them arose, that being Jesus and the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all the people who were against... Sorry, little bug. And all the people who were against Jesus. They all arose and brought him before Pilate, who, the way to look at this is, they don't have any authority to do anything against him. They know that they want to kill him. They know that he has, in their minds, blasphemed by saying that he is the Son of God. And they know that they don't have the authority to kill him, so they have to basically go get permission or go convince the state that they need to kill him. So they bring him before Pilate, and they begin to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." Pilate asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so," which means what? You know it to be true. Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee, even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. When he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him. I was hoping to see some sign done by him. You want to see some magic tricks, right? So he questioned him at some length, but he made no answer. And the chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod with the soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with one another. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." Okay, fine. You want him to be, injured. Cool, I can do that. But I don't see any reason to kill a guy. But they all cried out together, "Away with this man." Another way to say that is away with him from the earth, or let him be killed. He must die. And release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown in prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. They want to replace this known murderer who deserves death and is going to his own death. They want to replace him with Jesus because they were offended at his teaching. Right. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him." But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. Nothing quite like mob rule, right? And he released the man who had been thrown in prison for insurrection and murder, for whom they asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will. Now 1 Timothy 2:1 through 3:7. Again, this is a letter of pastoral instruction from an elder pastor to a younger pastor, teaching him how he should live and what he should do. First of all, then, I urge that supplications, that's a prayer for someone else, right? Prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions, that we may lead a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good, and it is pleasing in the sight of God our Savior, who desires all people to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. For there is one God, and there is one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all. See what I did there? Yeah. Which is the testimony given at the proper time. For this I was appointed a preacher and an apostle. I'm telling the truth. I'm not lying. A teacher of the Gentiles in faith and truth. I desire then that in every place the men should pray, lifting holy hands without anger or quarreling. Likewise also, the women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel, with modesty and self-control, not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire, and basically turning themselves into idols, right? So that people would look at them. And that people would, basically stare at them. That's not the point at all that they're trying to make, or that he's trying to make. But with what is proper for women who profess godliness, with good works. Let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. Now, I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived, and she became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. This isn't saying that women in the church are only saved when they have children, because there are obviously some people who have never had children and who may never have children. Some women are barren, right? What does it say about them? That they have been banned from heaven because of this? No. Eve, if you remember, way back when we read in Genesis chapter 3, was told that she was going to be saved through childbearing. And that child who came is the Christ, right? So the point that's being made isn't just that, you can be saved through childbearing. It's that she is saved through the childbearing that, came ultimately through Jesus, but also that she should continue in her normal work that she would have as a woman of God. That's what we're saying. The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, pastor, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his old household well, with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert. I've seen this trip up a lot of churches. When there's a new person who starts, someone who's like on fire for the Lord, and they come out, and they might be ambitious, which the Bible kind of speaks against, and they might be, focused. Maybe they have the ability to get a great following behind them. So what happens is the church will take these men and lift them up and thrust them into these positions that they should never be in to begin with. And then ultimately, they fall away. Not all of them, but some of them. And their fall is dramatic. And I've seen whole churches crumble because these charismatic young leaders who weren't Christians to begin with, they just really enjoyed all the pomp and circumstance and all of that came with the role, who really thought that they were Christians. But after a season, they were shown to be false converts. And it's bad. Absolutely. A pastor for a church should not be a recent convert. Give him some time to suffer. Right? Give him some time to learn how to interpret Scripture. Give him some time, even if you've been through seminary, that's great, fantastic. Doesn't mean you need to be a pastor. 22, 23, you've been a Christian all of 6 years? No, absolutely not. You can serve underneath another pastor, but you need to do the work of learning your own salvation before you can help to dictate the salvation or sanctification of other people. Let's continue on. So he must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil. Behold, the word of the Lord.